You know, I love how you kind of gave a lot of appreciation for your mentors, and I'd love to be able to do the same. We all had several mentors who helped us get to where we are. Mm-hmm. But, you know, when I got to a certain point in my career where I felt like I had enough to give somebody else, where I felt qualified to teach and pass on some knowledge and experience, I actually felt like the learning never stopped there. Mm-hmm. I learned so much more when I taught than when I didn't, you know, because you're going to get somebody who has a fresh idea, a fresh perspective, a different training than you had. And they're going to give you a perspective that you really didn't consider fully. They're going to ask a question that maybe you hadn't thought of before, or you have to explain something to them that maybe you're just not as good about as you thought you were, you know? So I think, you know, peak performance comes from not only mastering your craft, but actually teaching it at a level where you can really take somebody who has no understanding of what it is and helping them grasp a very complex concept with plain language. Yeah. That is the true mastery. Yeah. You know, if you can actually not just perform it, but articulate it in a way where, you know, you can teach it to even a patient's caregiver, a patient's family member. Like, this is a complex disease process. How can I explain it to you so that you get it? Yeah. Because that's a huge gap that pre-hospital medicine can provide to the entire landscape of medicine, right? With shorter doctor and PA and P and patient interactions. You know, sometimes there's gaps in communication. You know, you can print stuff off, you can hand it to them, you can highlight stuff, you can staple it together, you can tell them, you can read it to them. But if they don't understand it, they're just not going to understand it. Or if they don't put the effort in, they're just not going to, maybe that's not how they learn, right? Maybe that's not maybe that's not how they get through to somebody. Maybe it takes, you know, an emergency situation with an EMT or a paramedic taking the time to calm somebody down and say, hey, look, let's think about this disease process this way, you know, and then it'll click.
Well, Mike Tagman is a master at that.
Really?
He's a master at teaching you these complex things and putting them in plain English. In fact, he had a book out called Electrocardiography in Plain English.
Oh, really?
And it's not in print anymore, but I use it all the time, you know, and I'll have my students, you know, they'll go on Amazon and order it. You know, they have used ones all over the place, and you can get them still. But it reads cover to cover, and it's like, you know, it's just so easy to understand, and he's so good at that. You know, that's why he's one of the top educators in the country for EMS. You know, but.
Everything you hear today from myself and my guests is opinion only and doesn't represent any organizations or companies that any of us are affiliated with. The stories you hear have been modified to protect patient privacy, and any resemblance to real individuals is coincidental. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice nor used to diagnose any medical or healthcare conditions. Yeah, and that speaks to like a true understanding of something if you can explain it in terms people understand. And you make a good point that even if we don't have medical students or paramedic students or whatever, we've got to be teaching the patients, you know, so that regardless of how you feel about teaching, if you're in healthcare, you've got to be a teacher to some degree to be effective at your job. Because
can't avoid it.
Yeah. You got, and there's so many new people that need that, you know, and if, you know, you look at the new EMT student that's chilling in the ER, nobody's paying them any attention. They're just sitting there working on homework. I try to grab those guys and be like, hey, there's something happening in this, because you never know all the cool stuff that's happening in the ER, and they're just sitting there missing out on it.
They're not just there to start IVs. Right. They're going to start a million IVs.
Yeah, like point them in the direction of some cool stuff.
Touch patients.
Yeah,
Your hands need to touch patients.
Yes, I'll go through the ER in my job as in pre-hospital arena. I'll go through the ER and see those students, and they'll just be sitting there and standing there, and I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Why aren't you in the rooms?
Yeah. Go in and stumble through an assessment. Go ask a bunch of dumb questions of a patient that you're not sure what to ask. Just go practice, because you got to start practicing those things. Yeah. You're going to suck at it. Your assessment's going to be terrible. Your questions will all be meaningless, but you need to go practice on somebody.
You find the right patient, they'll talk to you.
Oh yeah, the patients don't care. Yeah, they would love to just tell you about their symptoms. You know,
learning how to talk to a stranger is a skill that is developed, right? You don't just Some people are very weird and rare and they can do it, but most people, you need to develop it. Like you have to practice it. Like getting comfortable in somebody else's personal space, maybe they're in your personal space.
Yeah.
Medicine requires you to accept that somebody's going to be in your personal space and you're going to be in theirs. And you have to learn how to be comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. And you do have to learn that as a student or as a professional, a paid, employee somewhere. When it comes to teaching those students who are EMT students, they look lost. They look like, oh God, I have another EMT student. Like they look ignored by a facility. One of the things I like to do is, because when I was in that position, I didn't know anything. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to think. I didn't know the approach, nothing. And what I do is I just go I give them a brief synopsis. Hey, this is XYZ patient. This is their chief complaint. This is my thought process. And this is how I got there. Does it take 5 minutes? Sure. Does it, incur a lot of questions from them? Yes, but that's the point, right? If you engage in them in a way where you allow them to springboard off of a good thought process, they will learn so much more from that even than if they were just standing there and seeing something cool.